goes on in Mark, and he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee. In Luke, it says, and he preached in the synagogues of Galilee. And he preached in is in both. And he preached in. Mark says their synagogues throughout all Galilee. Luke says the synagogues of Galilee. So their synagogues throughout all Galilee. Okay, well, throughout all is more descriptive than just the synagogues of Galilee. So I'm going to stick with that. There from Mark, synagogues from both. Now, throughout all, only from Mark. Galilee from both. Galilee. And that's the end in Luke. Afterwards, it goes on in chapter 5, and it came to pass that as the people pressed upon him to hear the word of God, he stood on the lake, and 2 ships standing by the lake about the fishermen were gone out of them. Okay, this is the point later on that he comes back to the lake, and he goes into the ship, that's Simon's ship, and he helps them catch a large catch of fish, and he calls them again, and this time they actually come with him. That's in Luke, but there's more in Mark. There's actually like 6 more verses, and then there's chapter 2. Something else I found out is that immediately after this verse in Mark, which is verse 39, chapter 1, it goes into the story of him healing a leper. And that exact incident is in Luke after Jesus comes back to the lake and that final time calls Peter, Andrew, James, and John, and they actually follow him. But I still have to put in this portion from Matthew, and then I actually have to do some more to make sure I'm not missing anything else from Matthew, because, well, Matthew was just out of order. I started typing up that verse saying he went into all Galilee and preached in their synagogues. That is not only in Mark and Luke, but that part is in Matthew. So the section in Matthew ends with James and John leaving the ship with their father when he calls them, and goes right into the fact that he then goes throughout all Galilee and teaching in the synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. And then it has in verse 24, it's like a short repeat of what he did earlier, the night after he had healed Peter's wife's mother. In verse 24, he says, and his fame went throughout all Syria, which is fine. That would be the result of him preaching throughout all Galilee. But then it continues with these words, and they brought to him all sick people that were taken with diverse diseases and torments, and them which were possessed with devils. It's very familiar. And those which were lunatic, and those that had the palsy, and he healed them. So I think those sections, 23, 24, and 25, where it says, there followed him multitudes from Galilee and the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, and Jordan. The wording is so close, it's pretty clear that this is just Matthew reiterating that one night when he cast out all those demons and healed all those people. And I'm sure he did a whole bunch more of that throughout Galilee, but this wording is so similar that I'm just going to put it together. Before I get into the fact that he's leaving, I'm going to go back now. And they brought to him all sick people. So, right here. At evening when the sun was setting, they brought many to him that were diseased and that were possessed with devils. So, I don't know, that were possessed with devils, Matthew has those exact words in Matthew 8, verse 16. When the evening was come, they brought to him many that were possessed with devils. This looks like an exact repeat. And if I don't just say that it's from the same event, that means that I would go on after this, say that Jesus prayed in the morning, invited them to go with him, but they didn't, so he goes out into all Galilee, preaches. Then I'd have to have this verse saying, they brought to him all sick people that were taken with diverse diseases and torments, and those which were possessed with devils, and those which were lunatic, and those that had the palsy, and he healed them. Which I could do, but it's going to be pretty clear to all of you readers when you see this that the wording is exactly the same. It's a repeat. But they are written twice in Matthew, so I guess it'd be okay if I have them twice in here. I'm almost certain that this is just a repeat of what is later written on, even though it does happen here. But I'll just have it a repeat. So then never mind that. I'm not going to go into that. I will instead continue on at the very last place I left off. And he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee and cast out devils. Just 39. Because the story of the leper comes after his final invitation in Luke to the disciples. So Luke is just 44, and he preached in the synagogues of Galilee. So actually the most descriptive verses here are in Matthew now. And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing all manner of sickness and disease among the people. And again, I'm going to have that repeat, verse 24. Fame through in all Syria, brought to him the sick people, taking with diverse diseases and torments, those which were possessed with devils. And then I'll have verse 25. And there followed him great multitudes of people from Galilee, Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, from Jordan. Alright, that's what I'll do. So, I guess I could have left it how I had it before, but I'll just redo it. I think I'll remember. And he preached in their synagogues, and he preached in the synagogues. And Jesus went about all Galilee, teaching in their synagogues. So that actually is the most descriptive. And Jesus went about all Galilee. It's pretty much the same in Mark. He preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee. Now, I'd say he went first, and then that he preached throughout all Galilee. Jesus went about all Galilee. No, I'll say, and Jesus went about, and then I'll pause. I'll go over to Mark and Luke and say, and he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee. That's what I'll do. Okay, I'm saving the ands in Mark and Luke for later. And actually, this is best, because remember when I said earlier that even though Jesus invited them, it's clear they didn't follow him because he had to come back later, as recorded in Luke, and he got them that huge catch of fish, and then they came and followed him after they got a small fortune and their families were taken care of. It was just Jesus, but it didn't say that in Mark and Luke, even though it was pretty clear from the context. But here in Matthew, it does say, just Jesus. And Jesus, verse 23, went about all Galilee. So this is perfect. So I'll stop there. Now, Mark continues and says, in their synagogues throughout all Galilee. Luke says almost the same thing, in the synagogues of Galilee. But I think I like the way it's explained in Matthew. It says, I could say throughout all Galilee, both words, throughout all, from Mark, and Galilee from all three. And then I can continue on with the explanation and why the synagogues are there from Matthew. Teaching in their synagogues. Oh wait, preaching. Okay, preaching, I'm going to have to put preaching again if I do that, because that's later on in Matthew. That's fine. And he preached from Matthew throughout all. Yeah, just throughout all from Mark. Okay, just throughout from Mark. Throughout all from Mark and Matthew, and Galilee from all three, comma, then teaching in their synagogues and cast out devils. Okay, that's good. It doesn't make it such a repeat from Matthew, because it repeats here in Mark also, that not only did he cast out devils the day before, when he preached throughout all the synagogues of Galilee, he also then, in those days, when he was by himself, cast out devils. So, okay, that lends credence to the fact that it's not just a repeat in Matthew. But before that, I'm going to put the explanation of what he's doing as recorded in Matthew. Teaching in their synagogues. Mark says preaching in their synagogues. So in there is both Matthew and Mark. Synagogues is all three. So in there, Matthew, Mark, synagogues, comma, and preaching the gospel of the kingdom throughout all Galilee. I already have throughout all Galilee. So I'm done with Luke now. Only the phrase from Mark remains, and cast out devils. All the rest of it's going to come from Matthew. So I'll just continue on with preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing all manner of sickness. And his fame went throughout all Syria, and they brought to him all sick people that were taken with diverse diseases and torments, and those which were possessed with devils, and cast out devils, and those that were lunatic, and he healed them and cast out devils. Okay, that's how I'll do it. I'll have a lot from Matthew, and at the very end, cast out devils. And those that had the palsy. Okay, now that I'm at this place, I'm going to say, and he, back over to Mark, or I could say, and from Mark, and from Mark, he from Matthew. I'm going to have to move that and around, because they're both at the very beginning, but I'm going to put one before the other. So I'm going to move an and. I'll just say, and he from Matthew cast out devils from Mark. Then that first and from Mark, which is before cast out devils, I'll go back to Matthew, healed them. And he cast out devils and healed them. That way it flows well. Throughout all Galilee. If I say that comma after Galilee, well, that can't come from Luke because there's a period. I'll say that comma only comes from Matthew, so that then I can use the comma from Mark at the beginning to split up this devil and. There we go. Okay, so now it reads, and he cast out devils and healed them. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't do that, if I put that and after cast out devils first, and I said the and he cast out devils, that and was from Mark, then I would just have to say the he came earlier. Maybe that wouldn't be as bad. Yeah, I don't think that would be as bad. So I'm going to say this and is from Matthew. No, because I need that comma. And I don't want to say that comma is just moved all by itself. I'll say the comma was moved with the and. Yeah, this is very important. And that's the end in Mark, because after it says, and there came a leper to him, beseeching him and kneeling down to him, if you'll make it clean. But I know that doesn't happen until after his final calling of the disciples in Luke, which has to come first. So I'm going to finish up this section in Matthew 25, the very last verse of chapter 4. And there followed him great multitudes of people from Galilee, and from Decapolis, and from Jerusalem, and from Judea, and from beyond Jordan,